Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Let's Have Renaissance, a podcast about writing, editing, publishing, literature, the arts, and more. I am Ito Utini.
And I'm Makaya Utini, and today we're speaking with Michael Wendroff. Michael is the son of an editor, the stepson of a literary agent, and most recently the author of a debut political thriller, What Goes Around. We're delighted to be with him today. First-time listeners, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're building a community of writers and artists from all walks of life, and since you're with us on this journey, we'd appreciate if you would like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, or a guest you want us to bring on, please let us know, and for more free resources, check out the Datekeepers blog at thedatekeepers.com/blog. Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to have you. Can you please tell us about you?
Hi there. Yes, I am a marketing consultant globally, but now I'm very proud to say that I am an author. My debut thriller, called What Goes Around, was published about a year ago in hardcover by a traditional publisher, Bloomsbury. The trade paperback version, which includes a book club discussion guide, was just published this past month. It's also available in ebook format as well as in audiobook format. And it's done really well based on the terrific reviews and the good sales. My publisher has given me a contract for a second book, so I'm very happy with that.
Congrats on that. We're glad
Thank
to hear
you.
that.
It's been quite the ride because, not only did my publisher publish the book in the English language in the US, UK, and Australia, but my agent was able to sell foreign language rights in Japanese. I can't wait to see that one. In Hungarian and in Italian. So it's been a fun ride.
That's really cool. And I'm sure you faced difficulties before you arrived here. Can you take us back and share with our audience your experiences, the challenges, rejections, and all of the, challenges that you had to face before you got accepted to the publisher?
Yeah, I've always wanted to write a book, and it's been many, many years until it finally happened. In fact, the impetus for writing this book is something that my mother said to me the second I was born, or so I'm told. I was put on her chest. She looked deeply in my eyes, and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again." And it was that again part that, really got to me. And I always wanted to explore that, write something about that, but it did take a number of years to do so. My mother was also influential in another way, because back in the day, she actually was an editor at New York City publishing houses. So I can, in fact, distinctly remember on a weekend her sitting on the couch cross-legged, manuscript pages strewn about her, red pen in hand, marking up all of those pages with her editorial comments. Now, you think that would have prepared me for when I got my editor's input, but not quite. And, it wasn't in a red pen. Those comments in the margins of a Word document were there, but it kind of felt like it could have been in a red pen. But I guess I wasn't surprised. I knew that editors give you a lot of input. And, my mother also impacted my interest in writing and publishing because she eventually remarried. And she married a literary agent, a pretty well-known literary agent back in the day. He's no longer with us, but he was the agent to a lot of really good mystery writers, thriller writers. And, that's how I got my start in those genres. The books I got they were his clients' books. I got them for free. So I was reading all the time, and I kind of got to learn which ones are selling and why. So I got a feel for that. And I also got to meet a lot of authors. In fact, there's one time when Robert Ludlum he was a best-selling author many, many times over. A lot of people today know him from the Bourne Identity movies with Matt Damon, but he was a really nice guy. And he once had us over to his winter home, which happened to be in the Caribbean, the island of St. Thomas. And I remember waking up one morning and tiptoed up to the living room. And, Bob was there with a yellow legal pad in hand and a Dixon Ticonderoga #2 pencil. And there he was writing away. And that's how he wrote his novels, by hand with his pencil. And man, I
Wow.
tell you, yeah, it's amazing. 450-page novels. That's how he did it. I mean, I admired his prose and his plotting, but thank God when it came time for me to write what goes around, I had my PC.
Yeah, for sure. I'm grateful every day for the technology that's available to us, not just as writers, but also because like all the other things you have to do as a writer, the marketing, just making yourself visible, being on social media, it would be untenable without the technology that we have available to us. But of course, at the same time, that comes with the expectation that we leverage that technology. Can you talk about what strategies you use and how you're getting your work out there?
What I've experienced and learned is that right now, being an author in today's world is 50% writing and 50% promotion. So, the publishers, unless you're, a Stephen King or Harlan Cobain, they don't do a lot for you. So it's up to you to get on, good podcasts like this one. It's up to you to contact local newspapers, contact bloggers, get yourself out there. I mean, I've been lucky. I've been really pushing things and I have been featured in magazines and newspapers and lots of blogs.
I don't think that's luck. I think that's your hard work. You can call it luck, but we
Yeah,
always advise writers to do their own work and promote their own work and build their own platforms. So
you're
kudos to you for doing.
absolutely right. I mean, if people who want to get a book published, they should start now at building their social media presence, trying to get a lot of followers, do everything they can. And, writers, many writers at least, tend to be more introverts. So it's harder for them to do some of these things, but you really got to push yourself and go out there. I mean, I know like a lot of times when I'm at book signings at bookstores or book fairs that where there are other authors there, I'll look at the tables where these other authors are sitting and they're, sitting back in their chair waiting for someone to approach them. And, I'm out in front of the table, so I'll grabbing whoever I can talking about my book. And maybe I have a bit of a benefit because my business background, I'm used to having to do some of that stuff. But authors today, it's hard if you're introverted, but just I'd advise keep at it because the more you do it, the easier it will become. Just be prepared that marketing is half the game as a writer these days.
Why do you think marketing and writing have to go together?
Well, they have to because there's just the sheer volume of books published each year in every single category. So published both by traditional and self-published books. I mean, I think Amazon lately had 12 million books that just came out and were on their list for the past year. That's a lot of books. And no one is, if you think you're going to write your book and it's going to be up on Amazon and people are going to find it, they're not. you'll, you'll sell a few copies to friends and relatives, but that's it. So you got to get out there and do the marketing and really hone those skills. So as I said, start early.
So what social media do you think is the best for writers and why?
Well, in terms of social media, Facebook is still big because of the demographic of many readers. Reading, at least the USA these days, is a bit of a sorrowful state. I saw one study that came out and said that actual reading of books among the general population is down by about a third over the last decade. And there's so much that's competing for the attention of people, whether it's movies, videos, TV, everything. And people don't have the attention span so much for books anymore. I mean, that's one of the reasons why my book, What Goes Around, the way I wrote it is very short chapters, and each chapter ends on a hook, which could be physical or psychological or emotional. And then my next short chapter starts with a very intriguing first sentence. That's why so many of the reviewers have talked about the page turning aspect of my novel. And that's intentional because I know people's attention spans are much shorter now than before. So, these days with the competition for readers, you got to stand out. You got to do all you can. First of all, on the writing side, make sure your book's as good as it can be. And if you're self publishing, make sure it gets edited by someone else very well. But then, as we've been talking on the marketing side,
Speaking of editing, can you talk about the relationship between writer and editor? And what is your advice for people who just think they wrote the book and it's great, good to go, just send it out, publish it, and you're done?
right. So those people aren't going to get anywhere. You really have to get your book edited. But before that, you've got to learn the craft of writing, especially if you're talking about contemporary fiction that's going to sell. And there's a few different ways you can hone your craft. One would be get yourself in writers groups and get feedback on your writing that way. And another, great place to hone your skills and learn your craft is going to like seminars and conferences. For my book, it's a thriller. So I go annually to something called Thriller Fest, which is in New York City, which, part of it is meeting other writers, which is great, as well as meeting famous writers. But, they'll have days and days of sessions on improving your craft, how to start off your novel, how to deal with the middle when it gets a little slow, point of view, different tenses to use in different situations, all sorts of craft things. So there's a lot of ways to learn. So I would say definitely take advantage of all those things and really learn your craft and practice it and write and write and write every day. I mean, even for me, I still believe in writing every day because if I take off a week on vacation, I'm messed up. I need to be in the novel in the mood. And when it comes to the actual editing, the way I work is once I've written the book, I'll give it to family, of course, to read it. My daughters are great readers. And then I'll give it to what's called a beta reader. And those are people that either read in your category or they could be friends or not friends, but they know the category. They love reading your category. So I gave my thriller to 3 beta readers who love the category. And I got a lot of good input back from them. And I made changes based on that. The other whole editing process, of course, is more of what I would say is a strategic editor dealing with macro issues like you might be better off if you added a prologue, or this whole piece of action maybe is better in the last part of the book versus the middle, that kind of stuff, big picture. And then after you've, made your revisions based on that, you get to deal with the line editor. And the line editor is just like it sounds. That editor will go through every single line in your book and make sure it's as good as can be. And then after that, there is a copy editor. And the function of the copy editor is to make sure, for example, you didn't say that she had green eyes in chapter 2 and brown eyes in chapter 8. And if you're dealing with guns, making sure, you've got that information down correctly. And if you're dealing with different dates, make sure you've got your timeline right, all that type of stuff. And then there's the proofreader because, no matter how many times someone looks at something, there's always mistakes. I'm shocked at published books I read today and find mistakes, but it's the proofreader's job to try and, make sure there aren't those mistakes. And during each of these phases, I've got to read through my book again. And I thought I was finally done. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I read my book. It's a good thing I liked it.
So do you intend to continue writing thrillers, or do you plan to dabble in other genres?
um, Thrillers only. I believe that writers can almost be like a brand. So the consumer, the readers, they have to know that from that brand, they're going to get the same quality and same type of experience all the time. So I want to be known as a thriller writer. That's what readers who read one of my books can then expect in the other. So if they enjoyed it, they can have the same type of experience with a different storyline. And I'm actually, in the second book that I got a contract for, it's actually going to be a prequel to What Goes Around. So it's going to have the 2 main characters. And, publishers tend to like series because you start to get a bit of a built-in audience. So if people liked your characters in the first go round, then they'll probably want to meet with them again in the second ring. So it has that. And I think a lot of thriller writers are focused on the plot. And And that, of course, is key. You have to have a plot that has not only is page turning as I try and make mine, but, has a lot of twists to it. And I plan all sorts of things up front in the plot, the subplots, the red herrings, all that stuff. So I agree, plot is key, but I think the character development is just as important because, if the reader doesn't have feelings for the character, then who cares? So, I want my readers to feel for the characters, and that'll make all the crazy stuff going on in the book even more meaningful to them.
Can you define for our audience what is a thriller and what differentiates it from other adjacent genres? I mean, is there such thing as a thriller that is not also a mystery? Is there such thing as a thriller that is not also a crime drama? How do you define those genre lines, and how do you know when you're staying inside them, and also when it makes sense to blur those lines a little bit to keep the readers engaged?
There often is a lot of overlap. And I would say the key difference between a mystery and a thriller is in a mystery, you're trying to figure out who done it, who is the killer in this story. And the thriller is more concerned about the future as to what's going to happen, is someone going to get killed, stopping that thing from happening. So, mysteries are more looking back and trying to figure it out, and thriller is more looking forward, trying to stop the bad action from happening.
Do you have any recommendations?
Oh, sure. I mean, I love Harlan Coben. I think his thrillers are great. I love Jeffrey Deaver, Isabel Maldonado, going back in time a little bit, Dean Koontz. And I've liked a lot of Stephen King's work, especially the early work, though that's more horror. And J.D. Barker is a writer out now who I love.
Well, speaking of reading, do you have anything that you would like to share with our audience?
I could do that. I will say that my entire prologue to What Goes Around is as follows. I'll remember the day I died for the rest of my life. That's the whole prologue. That's it. I can read a little bit from one of the chapters if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay, here we go. This is kind of from the middle of What Goes Around. The fires were burning. At first, she and Jack saw it from afar. The torches were lit, their flames glowing and dancing about as the groups assembled at dusk like a coven of witches. There was a combination of thrill and some fear in the air, growing stronger and stronger as the rally hour grew near. The smell of kerosene permeated the atmosphere as the dark smoke of the torches rose upward, obscuring the sky. The air was scorching. Fires were burning within the hardened hearts of the marchers as well. A myriad of malicious men, an army of arsonists converged, all uniformed in their individual group's garb, different attires, but all sharing their tired ideas of hate. The groups entered a sea of camaraderie, merging together, a cacophonous chorus of crazies. They began marching through the center of town. The sound of their boots in a uniform gait thundered down the streets, echoing 1930s Germany. Saint marched in with them. The excitement in the air was palpable, the beating of the men's hearts out of control. From above, the glowing torches that united the groups looked like a slithering serpent about to strike. With loud and deep voices, their chants reverberated throughout the dark streets. You will not replace us. The faces of the men chanting bore a strange combination of glee and fury. Their angry ecstasy glowed as fiercely as the torches, a primordial and primeval display of determination. The local police stood to the side as they marched by, under strict orders to let people express their First Amendment rights. Most had their arms folded over their crisp blue shirts. Some had their hands clasped behind their backs. If things were to get out of hand, they had pepper spray affixed to their duty belts, tasers secured in holsters. Their eyes darted all over the crowd. They gazed at men passing them with their hands taped, ready for punching others with brass knuckles. The police watched warily as the shields pushed forward. They were up on their toes, ready to respond. But they were totally unprepared for crowds of the magnitude before them. and hoped there wouldn't be more lethal weapons hidden about. The local denizens continued to stare, mouths agape, though some subtly smiling. The Brotherhood of Bigots continued their march from hell. Dante's Inferno brought to infernal life on Earth. The first rock's throne started it off.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.